The journey back to Earth felt endless, each day stretching longer than the last. The ship's sterile interior offered no comfort, only a constant reminder of the emptiness left by Alex's absence. Laura spent most of her time in the small cabin she shared with Mia, poring over Samuel Hayes' journal again and again. She hoped to find some clue, some explanation for what had happened on the planet. But the pages revealed nothing new. Only silence stared back at her. Maya stayed quiet too, retreating into herself as the days passed. She avoided conversations, preferring to sit alone in the corner of the common area, staring out at the stars. Her eyes were hollow, haunted by memories she couldn't escape. Sometimes she whispered Alex's name under her breath, as if trying to keep him alive in her mind. Ryan carried the burden differently. He threw himself into his duties, checking systems, reviewing coordinates, and ensuring the ship was running smoothly. But even he couldn't hide the weight of guilt that shadowed his face. At night, when the others were asleep, he sat in the cockpit, staring at the endless void outside. He replayed every decision they had made, wondering if there had been another way, any other way, to save them all. Alex's sacrifice lingered like an unspoken ghost among them. None of them could forget the moment he had knelt by the fissure, offering himself to the planet. It wasn't just the act itself that haunted them. It was the realization that the planet had demanded something from them. And they had given in. They had played by its rules, and it had cost them dearly. When they finally reached Earth's orbit, the sight of the blue-green planet brought mixed emotions. Relief washed over them, but it was tinged with sadness. Home should have felt like safety, like closure. Instead, it felt like a reminder of everything they had lost. As the ship docked and they prepared to disembark, Ryan gathered everyone in the common area. His expression was grim, his voice steady but heavy. "We need to decide what we're going to say," he began. "About Alex. About everything." Laura nodded slowly. "We can't tell them the truth about the planet. Not all of it. They wouldn't understand, and they'd want to go back. Let them think it was an accident," Ryan suggested. "A malfunction or something. Anything to keep people away from that place." Mia wiped her eyes, nodding weakly. "I don't want anyone else to end up like Alex." They agreed to keep the details vague, focusing only on the parts of their mission that seemed safe to share. As they stepped off the ship and onto Earth's soil, they were greeted by a team of scientists and officials eager to hear about their findings. Laura handed over the journal reluctantly, knowing it contained answers, but also questions that might never be fully understood. In the weeks that followed, life tried to return to normal, but none of them could shake the memory of the planet. Laura dreamed of glowing plants and whispering voices, waking in the middle of the night drenched in sweat. Maya visited Alex's family, struggling to explain why he hadn't come home without breaking down completely. Ryan buried himself in work, avoiding anything that reminded him of the mission. But late at night, when the world was quiet, they all thought about the same thing: the planet, alive and watching, waiting for its next visitors. Somewhere deep in the universe, it pulsed faintly, its golden light flickering beneath the surface. It wasn't done, not with humanity, not with anyone who dared to step into its domain. And though they had escaped, none of them truly believed they were free. The planet had marked them, just as it had marked Alex. Its whispers would follow them forever. The ride back to the ship was silent, each member of the team lost in their own thoughts. The weight of what had happened pressed down on them like a suffocating blanket. Alex's sacrifice hung over the group, a grim reminder of the cost they had paid to survive. No one spoke, no one knew what to say. Laura sat in the passenger seat, staring out at the alien landscape as it blurred past. Her hands were still trembling, and she couldn't shake the image of Alex kneeling by the fissure, offering himself to the planet. She clenched her fists tightly, trying to push away the guilt that threatened to overwhelm her. "We shouldn't have let him do it," she muttered under her breath, though she wasn't sure if anyone heard. Ryan glanced at her briefly before returning his focus to driving. His knuckles were white against the wheel, His jaw clenched so hard it looked like it might crack. He wanted to say something, anything, to ease the tension, but words felt useless. What could he possibly say to make this better? They had left someone behind, sacrificed him. And for what? A chance to escape. Mia sat in the back, hugging her knees to her chest. Her face was streaked with tears, and her breathing came in shallow gasps. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Alex's face, the way he had smiled weakly at her before stepping toward the fissure. She whispered his name over and over again, as if saying it enough times would bring him back. When they finally reached the ship, the sight of it brought little relief. It stood tall and metallic against the strange horizon, a beacon of safety, but also a reminder of everything they were leaving behind. Ryan parked the rover and turned off the engine, but no one moved. For a moment, all they could do was sit there, staring at the vessel that would take them home. "We need to go," Ryan said finally, his voice low and strained. "Now." Laura nodded numbly, opening the door and stepping out. The others followed, their movements slow and heavy. As they approached the ship, Alina appeared from the shadows, her pale figure almost blending into the dim light. She stopped a few feet away, watching them with an unreadable expression. "You should leave quickly," she said softly. "The land may not stay calm forever." Ryan stepped forward, his anger bubbling to the surface. "You knew this would happen," he accused, his voice sharp. "You knew someone would have to die." Alina didn't flinch. "Yes," she admitted simply. "But you chose to stay when I warned you to leave. This is the price of your curiosity." Her words hit like a punch to the gut. Laura opened her mouth to argue but stopped herself. What was the point? Alina wasn't wrong. They had ignored her warnings, pushed deeper into the planet's secrets, and now Alex was gone because of it. Will it ever be safe for humans here? Laura asked quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. Alina shook her head. This place does not belong to humans. It never will. Those who come here must accept its rules, or pay the price. With that, she turned and disappeared into the darkness, leaving the group alone with their grief and guilt. They climbed aboard the ship without another word, sealing the hatch behind them. Inside, the familiar hum of the engines offered some small comfort, but it wasn't enough to ease the ache in their hearts. As the ship lifted off, everyone gathered in the cockpit, watching through the windows as the planet grew smaller and smaller below them. The glowing plants faded into the distance, replaced by the vast emptiness of space. For a long time, no one spoke. The only sound was the soft hum of the engines and the occasional sniffle from Mia. Finally, Ryan broke the silence. "We'll report what happened," he said, his voice heavy with regret. "But we won't tell them everything. Some things they don't need to know." Laura nodded slowly, her gaze fixed on the now distant planet. She clutched Samuel Hayes' journal tightly in her hands, its worn pages a reminder of the lives lost to this mysterious world. "Do you think Alex knew?" she asked softly. "Knew how dangerous it really was?" Ryan hesitated, then sighed. "Maybe, but he did it anyway. To save us." The ship continued its journey back toward Earth, carrying 4 survivors and the memory of one who hadn't made it. None of them would forget the price they had paid, or the strange, living planet that had taken Alex from them. Somewhere deep inside, they wondered if the land truly was satisfied, or if it was already waiting for the next outsiders foolish enough to step onto its surface. The tremors grew stronger, shaking the ground beneath their feet like an angry beast trying to throw them off. The whispers swirled around them, overlapping and rising in volume, until it felt like the planet itself was screaming. Laura and Ryan exchanged a tense glance, both of them torn between fear and duty. The decision Alina had demanded hung heavy in the air, pressing down on all of them. "I'll do it," Alex said suddenly, his voice cutting through the chaos. Everyone turned to look at him, stunned. "No," Mia blurted out, grabbing his arm. "You can't." Alex gently pulled away, his face pale but determined. Someone has to. If this is the only way to save everyone else, then I'll do it. I'm not letting anyone else die because of me. Ryan stepped forward, his expression hard. We don't even know if this will work. For all we know, the planet will just keep coming after us no matter what. Alina shook her head firmly. It will work, but you must hurry. The land does not wait. Laura hesitated, her mind racing. She wanted to argue, to find another solution, but deep down, she knew they were running out of time. The trembling intensified, sending cracks snaking across the ground. A faint red glow began to seep from the fissures, casting an ominous light over the group. Alex, please, Mia pleaded, tears welling up in her eyes. There has to be another way. There isn't, Alex replied softly, his voice steady despite the fear in his eyes. He took the blade from Alina's hand and held it tightly. I've made my choice. Before anyone could stop him, Alex walked toward the edge of one of the glowing fissures. The red light illuminated his face, making him look almost otherworldly. He knelt down, placing the tip of the blade against his palm. His hand shook, but he didn't hesitate. Wait, Laura shouted, rushing forward. She grabbed his wrist, her fingers trembling as she tried to pull the blade away. We can't just give up like this. There has to be another way. Alex met her gaze, his eyes filled with resolve. Laura, listen to me. If this saves you guys, then it's worth it. Trust me. For a moment, no one moved. The whispers grew louder, almost deafening, as if the planet was urging Alex to finish what he had started. Finally, with a deep breath, Alex pressed the blade into his skin. Blood welled up instantly, dripping onto the cracked earth. The reaction was immediate. The ground stopped shaking, and the red glow faded, leaving behind only darkness. The whispers ceased, replaced by an unnatural silence that stretched across the landscape. The air felt lighter, as if the weight of the planet's anger had lifted. But something wasn't right. Alex stood up, clutching his bleeding hand. At first, he seemed fine, but then his body stiffened. His eyes widened in panic as he stumbled backward, gasping for air. What's happening? He choked out, collapsing to his knees. Alex, Mia screamed, rushing to his side. She cradled his head in her lap, tears streaming down her face. But there was nothing she could do. His breathing slowed, his movements grew weaker, and within moments, he went still. The group stared in horror, unable to comprehend what they had just witnessed. Laura sank to the ground, her hands covering her mouth as guilt and grief overwhelmed her. Ryan clenched his fists, his jaw tight with anger and helplessness. Alina watched silently, her expression unreadable. After a long pause, she spoke, her voice soft but firm. The land is satisfied. For now. You must leave before it changes its mind. No one argued this time. They gathered around the rover, their movements slow and mechanical, weighed down by shock and sorrow. As they climbed aboard, none of them looked back at Alex's lifeless body lying on the cold ground. The planet had taken its price, and though they had survived, the cost was etched deeply into their hearts. As the rover sped away, heading back toward their ship, the glowing plants flickered once more, casting long shadows across the terrain. In the distance, the stone circle where they had performed the ritual pulsed faintly, its golden light dimming until it vanished entirely. The planet was calm. But for how long? The team moved quickly, their footsteps crunching against the now stable ground as they retraced their path back toward the rover. The eerie calm that had followed the ritual at the stone circle was unsettling, like the quiet before a storm. Every step felt heavier, as if the planet itself was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. Laura stayed near the front, her mind racing. She couldn't shake the feeling that they hadn't truly solved anything, that the glowing pillar and the strange symbols were only part of a much larger puzzle. The journal had helped them reach this point, but it offered no answers about what came next, and the fleeting shadows she'd seen earlier lingered in her thoughts, refusing to fade. Behind her, Ryan kept scanning the horizon, his weapon ready. "Stay alert," he muttered, his voice low but firm. "This isn't over." No one argued. They all felt it, the weight of unseen eyes watching them from the darkness. Even the air seemed different now, charged with an energy that prickled against their skin. The glowing plants, which had returned faintly after the red sky shifted to blue, cast just enough light to reveal the outlines of rocks and trees, but not enough to dispel the sense of unease. As they approached the rover, Maya stopped suddenly, her flashlight beam catching something unusual. "Wait. Look at this," she said, pointing at the ground. Everyone turned to see what she was talking about. Fresh footprints, human footprints, were scattered around the vehicle. They weren't the same ones they'd found earlier. These were deeper, more deliberate, as if whoever made them had been pacing or circling the rover. "Someone's been here," Alex whispered, his voice tight with fear. "But who?" Ryan stepped forward cautiously, his weapon raised. He circled the rover, checking every angle. The vehicle appeared untouched, but the footprints told a different story. "We're not alone," he said finally, his tone grim. Before anyone could respond, a soft rustling sound came from nearby bushes. The group froze, their flashlights swinging toward the noise. For a moment, there was nothing, just the faint swaying of leaves in the breeze. Then, slowly, a figure emerged. It was Alina, her pale face illuminated by the dim glow of the plants. She looked even more fragile than before, her hollow eyes filled with urgency. "You must leave," she said, her voice barely audible. "Now." "We tried to help," Laura said, stepping closer. "We did the ritual at the stones." The trembling stopped. Alina shook her head, her expression grim. "Not enough. The land is awake. It knows you are here. It will not stop until it has you." "What does it want?" Ryan demanded, his frustration boiling over. "Why is it doing this?" Alina hesitated, as if choosing her words carefully. "The land feeds on outsiders. It takes their strength, their life force. Your presence angers it. You cannot stay." Laura frowned, glancing at the others. "Is there any way to stop it? To make it calm again?" Alina's gaze dropped to the ground, her hands trembling slightly. "There is one way," she admitted quietly, "but it requires sacrifice." The word hung in the air, heavy and foreboding. No one spoke for a moment, each person grappling with what Alina might mean. "What kind of sacrifice?" Laura asked finally, her voice steady despite the knot forming in her stomach. Alina didn't answer directly. Instead, she reached into a pouch tied to her waist and pulled out a small, sharp blade. She held it out toward them, her hand shaking. "One of you must give yourself to the land. Only then will it be satisfied." Ryan stepped forward, his jaw clenched. "Absolutely not. We're not killing anyone for this place." "It is not murder," Alina said softly. "It is balance. My people have done this for generations. Without it, the land consumes us all." The group exchanged uneasy glances. None of them wanted to believe her, but the evidence was undeniable. The planet was alive. And it was hungry. Laura took a deep breath, trying to think clearly. "If we do this, will it let the rest of us go?" Alina nodded slowly. "Yes, but you must decide quickly. The land grows restless." Ryan grabbed Laura's arm, pulling her aside. "We're not doing this," he hissed. "There has to be another way." "And what if there isn't?" Laura shot back, her voice rising. "Do you want to risk all of us dying because we refuse to listen?" Before Ryan could respond, the ground trembled again, a sharp, violent jolt that sent everyone stumbling. The whispers returned, louder and angrier than before. Through the chaos, Alina's voice cut through like a knife. "Decide now, or the land will choose for you." The team burst out of the cave, their boots crunching against the dry soil as they stumbled into the twilight. The glowing plants that had lit up the landscape earlier now flickered weakly, casting long, distorted shadows across the ground. The wind howled around them, carrying with it the same eerie whispers they'd heard before. But this time, the voices seemed closer, more urgent. "What's happening?" Maya asked, her voice shaking as she glanced over her shoulder. "Why is it getting darker?" Ryan didn't answer. His focus was on the horizon, where the sky had turned an unnatural shade of deep red. The air felt heavier, pressing down on them like a thick blanket. He motioned for the group to keep moving, his weapon still drawn. "We need to get back to the rover. Now." Laura hesitated, clutching Samuel Hayes' journal tightly in her hands. She wanted to stay and learn more about Alina and her people, but even she couldn't ignore the growing sense of danger. Reluctantly, she followed Ryan, her eyes scanning the dimly lit terrain for any sign of movement. As they moved, the whispers grew louder, swirling around them like a chorus of unseen voices. Some of the words were faintly recognizable, fragments of English mixed with sounds that didn't belong to any human language. It was as if the planet itself was speaking, its tone shifting between curiosity and anger. "Do you hear that?" Alex asked, stopping suddenly. His flashlight beam swept across the ground, revealing fresh footprints in the dirt. They weren't old like the ones they'd found earlier. They looked as though they'd been made moments ago. "Keep moving," Ryan snapped, grabbing Alex by the arm. "Don't stop." But Alex wasn't the only one who noticed. Laura slowed down, her gaze fixed on the prints. They led away from the cave, heading deeper into the wilderness. "Someone, or something, is out here with us," she said quietly. Before anyone could respond, a loud crack echoed through the valley, followed by a violent tremor that sent everyone stumbling. The ground split open in places, jagged fissures appearing out of nowhere. A cloud of dust rose into the air, choking them as they struggled to regain their footing. "This isn't normal," Mia shouted, coughing as she covered her mouth with her sleeve. "What's going on?" "It's the planet," Laura said, her voice barely audible over the chaos. "Alina said it wakes." I think this is what she meant. Ryan cursed under his breath, scanning the area for a safe path forward. The rover was still too far away, and the terrain was rapidly becoming unstable. "We can't outrun this," he muttered. "We need cover." "There." Alex pointed toward a cluster of large boulders nearby. The rocks formed a natural barrier, offering some protection from the trembling earth and swirling winds. Without hesitation, the group sprinted toward it, ducking behind the stones just as another tremor rocked the ground. For a moment, all they could do was crouch there, catching their breath while the planet raged around them. The whispers had grown deafening, overlapping and twisting until they'd formed a single continuous hum. It vibrated in their chests, making it hard to think clearly. "We can't stay here," Ryan said finally, his voice strained. "If we don't move soon, we'll be trapped." Laura nodded, though her mind was racing. She opened the journal again, flipping through the pages desperately. There had to be something in Samuel Hayes' writings that could help them understand what was happening, and how to survive it. Her fingers stopped on a passage near the end of the book. Hayes described a similar event during his time on the planet. He called it the Awakening and wrote about how the land seemed alive, reacting violently to outsiders. According to him, the key to surviving was finding a specific location, a place he referred to as the heart of the world. "What are you reading?" Ryan asked, noticing the look of determination on her face. "There's a way out," Laura said, standing up despite the tremors. "Hayes mentioned a place, the heart of the world. If we can find it, maybe we can calm the planet down." Ryan stared at her, torn between disbelief and hope. "And if you're wrong?" "Then we're no worse off than we are now," Laura replied firmly. With nothing left to lose, the team followed her lead, heading into the unknown once again. Behind them, the glowing plants dimmed completely, plunging the landscape into darkness. Above, the red sky pulsed like a heartbeat, watching their every move. Whatever awaited them at the heart of the world, one thing was certain: the planet wasn't done testing them yet. "You mean Earth?" Laura pressed, her pulse quickening. Are you descendants of Samuel Hayes and the others? At the mention of the name, Elena's expression changed. A flicker of recognition passed over her face, followed by sadness. She nodded slowly. Yes, Hayes, father. The revelation hit the group like a shockwave. These people, these strange, ghostly figures, were the descendants of the original settlers. Generations had passed since Samuel Hayes and his companions had been stranded on this planet, and over time, they had adapted to survive. But survival had come at a cost. What happened to you? Laura asked softly, her voice tinged with pity. Why do you live like this? Elena's gaze shifted to the altar in the center of the room, her eyes clouding with sorrow. The land. It takes. Always hungry. Ryan frowned, glancing at the altar and then back at Elena. What do you mean? What does the land take? Before Elena could answer, the ground trembled again, harder this time. The glowing eyes in the shadows multiplied, surrounding the team completely. The figures began to murmur among themselves, their voices rising in volume until it sounded like a chorus of whispers. Laura felt a chill run down her spine. It wasn't just the cold air causing it. There was something unnatural about the sound, as if the planet itself was speaking through them. We need to leave, Ryan said firmly, grabbing Laura's arm. Now. Elena shook her head urgently, stepping closer. No safe. Above. Stay here. Wait. For what? Alex demanded, his voice tight with fear. Elena didn't answer directly. Instead, she pointed toward the entrance of the cave. Beyond it, the faint glow of the alien plants outside had dimmed significantly, casting the landscape in an eerie twilight. The wind picked up, carrying with it the same distorted voices they'd heard earlier, but louder now, angrier. The land wakes, Elena whispered, her voice barely audible. Go now. Too late. Ryan tightened his grip on his weapon, scanning the growing crowd of figures. We're not staying here. Let's move. Reluctantly, the team turned toward the exit, their hearts racing. As they hurried out of the chamber, the murmurs of Elena's people followed them, blending with the howling wind outside. None of them dared to look back, not even Laura, who clutched the journal tightly against her chest. Whatever secrets this planet held, one thing was clear. It wasn't done with them yet. The glowing eyes in the shadows grew brighter, reflecting the team's flashlights like tiny flames flickering in the darkness. The rumbling beneath their feet intensified, sending more pebbles cascading from the ceiling. Laura took a step back, her heart pounding as she tried to make sense of what they were seeing. The eyes didn't blink or move. They simply stared, unblinking and unnerving. Turn off the lights, Ryan said suddenly, his voice sharp but calm. Maybe they're attracted to the light. Without hesitation, everyone clicked off their flashlights. The chamber plunged into near total darkness, save for the faint glow of the strange eyes scattered around them. For a moment, there was silence, only the sound of shallow breathing and the occasional drip of water echoing through the cave. Then, slowly, the eyes began to shift. They moved closer, one by one, revealing shadowy figures emerging from the darkness. Humanoid shapes stepped into view, their bodies covered in tattered clothing made from animal hides and woven plant fibers. Their skin was pale, almost translucent, and their faces bore an unsettling resemblance to humans, but not quite. Something about them felt off. They're alive, Maya whispered, her voice trembling with both relief and fear. One of the figures stepped forward, a woman with long matted hair and piercing green eyes. She raised a hand, palm outward, as if signaling for peace. Her lips parted, and though no sound came out at first, her mouth formed words that looked vaguely familiar. She's trying to speak, Laura said, taking a cautious step toward her. It's English, or something close to it. The woman repeated the motion, this time making a soft, raspy noise. Help. Us. Ryan immediately stepped between Laura and the figure, his weapon drawn. Stay back, he warned. his voice firm. "We don't know what they want." But Laura didn't listen. She lowered her hands slowly, showing she meant no harm. "We're here to help," she said gently, keeping her tone steady. "Who are you?" The woman tilted her head, studying Laura with an intensity that made her skin crawl. After a moment, she spoke again, her voice clearer this time. "Elena." She pointed to herself, then gestured to the others behind her. "My people." Laura glanced at Ryan, who still looked wary but nodded slightly, allowing her to continue. "Where did you come from?" Laura asked, choosing her words carefully. Elena hesitated, as if searching for the right way to explain. Finally, she pointed upward, toward the ceiling of the cave. "Sky. Stars." Inside the cave, the air felt heavy, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. The team moved cautiously, their flashlights casting long, flickering shadows on the rough stone surfaces. Laura knelt beside one of the tools Alex had picked up earlier, examining it closely. It was simple, a sharp-edged rock tied to a wooden handle with what looked like animal sinew, but its craftsmanship was undeniable. Whoever made it knew how to survive. "These tools are primitive," Laura said softly, running her fingers over the worn surface. "But they're functional. This wasn't just some random group of people. They had skills." Ryan crouched beside her, his expression tense. "Skills or not, this doesn't explain how they got here, or why they stayed." Mia and Alex wandered farther into the cave, their lights sweeping across the uneven floor. Suddenly, Mia gasped and pointed at something in the corner. "Look at this." The others hurried over, their footsteps echoing against the stone walls. What they found took their breath away. A pile of objects that clearly belonged to humans. There were scraps of clothing, faded but still recognizable as shirts and pants, along with small personal items like buttons and buckles. But the most striking discovery was a leather-bound book lying partially buried under the debris. Laura reached for it carefully, brushing away the dirt. The cover was cracked and worn, but the title was still legible. Asterisk Journal of Samuel Hayes Asterisk. Her hands trembled as she opened it, revealing pages filled with handwritten notes and sketches. The ink had faded in places, but the words were clear enough to read. "This is incredible," Laura whispered, flipping through the pages. "It's a journal. Someone named Samuel Hayes wrote about life here, on this planet." "What does it say?" Ryan asked, leaning closer. Laura skimmed the first few entries, her eyes widening with each sentence. "He talks about being part of a secret project back on Earth, some kind of experiment involving teleportation technology. According to this, he and a group of others were sent here decades ago, but something went wrong. The machine malfunctioned, and they couldn't get back." "Teleportation," Alex echoed, shaking his head. "That sounds impossible." "Maybe not," Maya said quietly. "If someone figured out how to do it, they wouldn't exactly advertise it, would they?" Laura continued reading aloud, her voice growing more urgent. "Hayes says they tried to adapt once they realized they were stuck. They built shelters, hunted local wildlife, even attempted farming. But resources were scarce, and tensions ran high. Over time, some members of the group disappeared, either dying off or leaving to explore other parts of the planet." Ryan frowned, glancing around the dimly lit cave. "So where are they now? If these people survived for so long, why haven't we seen any sign of them?" "I don't know," Laura admitted, closing the journal. "But there's more here we need to understand. Maybe answers lie deeper inside the cave." Reluctantly, the team pressed onward, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. The passage narrowed, forcing them to walk single file. The air grew colder, and the silence became almost oppressive. Every step felt heavier, as though the weight of the planet itself was pressing down on them. Finally, they emerged into a larger chamber, its ceiling stretching high above them. In the center of the room stood something that made them all freeze, a crude altar made of stacked stones. On top of it lay a human skull, its hollow eye sockets staring blankly into the void. "What is this?" Mia whispered, her voice trembling. Laura approached cautiously, her flashlight beam illuminating the altar. Around the base, she noticed carvings similar to the ones they'd seen outside, symbols etched deeply into the rock. But there was something else too, dried streaks of red staining the stones. "Blood," Ryan muttered grimly. This place wasn't just a home, it was a ritual site. The team exchanged uneasy glances. None of them wanted to admit it, but the evidence was clear. These settlers hadn't just struggled to survive. They had turned to desperate measures. Sacrifice, perhaps, or something darker. "We should go," Alex said suddenly, his voice tight. "This feels wrong." Laura hesitated, torn between curiosity and caution. But before she could respond, a low rumble echoed through the chamber, shaking the ground beneath their feet. Pebbles tumbled from the ceiling, and the faint sound of whispers returned, louder this time, more insistent. "They're coming," Maya said, her voice barely audible. "Who?" Ryan demanded, spinning around. No one answered, because deep in the shadows, glowing eyes began to appear. The rover rumbled over the uneven terrain, its wheels kicking up clouds of fine dust as it followed the trail of footprints. The team sat in silence, their eyes fixed on the marks etched into the soft soil. Every now and then, Laura leaned forward to get a better look, her mind racing with questions. How could humans have reached this distant planet? And why would they leave behind such clear evidence of their presence? After driving for nearly an hour, the trail led them to a rocky outcrop jutting out of the ground like a jagged wall. The footprints stopped abruptly at the base of the rocks, as if whoever made them had simply vanished. Ryan brought the rover to a halt and stepped out cautiously, his hand resting on the weapon strapped to his side. "Stay close," he said, glancing back at the others. Laura climbed out next, her boots crunching against the dry ground. She scanned the area, her sharp eyes picking up details most people would miss. Near the base of the rocks, she noticed something unusual, a pile of stones stacked neatly in a way that didn't seem natural. It looked almost like a marker. "What's that?" Maya asked, pointing at the stones. "I'm not sure," Laura replied, moving closer. She crouched down and brushed away some of the dirt around the base. Beneath the surface, she found faint carvings, symbols scratched into the rock. They weren't letters or numbers, but shapes that resembled primitive drawings. A circle here, a zigzag there. Something about them felt familiar, though Laura couldn't quite place why. "These look man-made," Alex said, kneeling beside her. "Do you think they're connected to the footprints?" "It's possible," Laura murmured, tracing one of the carvings with her finger. "Whoever left the prints might have been trying to leave a message." Ryan frowned, his gaze darting around the area. A message for who? Us? Or someone else? Before anyone could answer, a sudden gust of wind swept through the valley, carrying with it a strange sound. It was faint at first, almost like whispering, but it grew louder until it filled the air around them. The voices, if that's what they were, seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere all at once. They spoke in fragments, broken phrases that didn't make sense. "Did you hear that?" Mia whispered, her voice trembling. Everyone turned toward the source of the noise, but there was nothing to see except the endless expanse of glowing plants and jagged rocks. The whispers faded as quickly as they had appeared, leaving behind an eerie silence. "What was that?" Alex asked, his face pale. "I don't know," Ryan admitted, gripping his weapon tighter. "But we need to stay alert. This place is starting to feel wrong." Laura ignored him, still focused on the carvings. She pulled out her scanner and ran it over the symbols, hoping to find some kind of pattern or meaning. To her surprise, the device picked up traces of metallic residue embedded in the rock. Someone, or something, had used tools to create these markings. "This wasn't done by accident," she said, showing the readings to the others. "These symbols were made deliberately, probably to mark this spot." "For what?" Ryan asked, his tone skeptical. I don't know yet, Laura admitted, but I think we should keep looking. There might be more clues nearby. Reluctantly, Ryan agreed, and the group began searching the surrounding area. It didn't take long for them to find something, a narrow opening hidden behind a cluster of boulders. At first glance, it looked like a natural crack in the rock, but upon closer inspection, they realized it was the entrance to a cave. Should we go in? Maya asked nervously, peering into the dark opening. We don't have much choice, Laura said firmly. If there are answers here, we need to find them. Ryan hesitated, his instincts telling him to turn back. But deep down, he knew they couldn't leave without understanding what they'd stumbled upon. With a heavy sigh, he nodded. Fine, but we stick together. No heroics. One by one, they entered the cave, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. The air inside was cool and damp, and the walls glistened faintly as if coated with moisture. As they moved deeper, the light revealed something astonishing. Remnants of human activity. Tools carved from stone lay scattered on the ground, along with crude pottery shards and bits of fabric. This can't be real, Alex muttered, picking up one of the tools. How did humans end up here? Laura stared at the artifacts, her heart pounding. Whoever these people were, they hadn't just visited this planet. They had lived here. And judging by the condition of the items, they hadn't been gone for very long. The spaceship descended slowly through the thick, swirling clouds of an uncharted planet in the Andromeda galaxy. The crew of 6 had spent years traveling across the vast emptiness of space to reach this distant world. Their mission was simple: study the planet's unique environment and gather data that could help humanity understand the universe better. But what they found on the surface would change everything they thought they knew. Dr. Laura Bennett stood at the edge of the landing site, her boots sinking slightly into the soft, grayish soil. She adjusted her visor and glanced at the others. Captain Ryan Carter was busy checking the instruments on their rover, making sure everything was working properly before they ventured farther. Beside him, 2 engineers, Alex and Mia, were unloading equipment from the ship. Everyone seemed focused, but there was an air of excitement too. This was the first time humans had ever set foot on this planet. Laura took a deep breath and looked around. The landscape was strange yet beautiful. Towering rock formations jutted out of the ground like jagged teeth, and the sky above shimmered with hues of purple and orange. In the distance, patches of glowing plants lit up the terrain, casting eerie shadows on the ground. It felt otherworldly, almost dreamlike. Okay, team, Ryan said, his voice firm but calm. Let's get the drones up and running. We need to scan the area before we move any farther. Laura nodded and turned her attention to the small drone hovering nearby. It buzzed softly as it zipped back and forth, mapping the terrain and sending images back to the ship's computer. Everyone gathered around the monitor to watch the live feed. At first, the footage showed nothing unusual, just rocks, dirt, and more of the glowing vegetation. But then something caught Laura's eye. Wait, she said suddenly, pointing at the screen. Zoom in on that spot. Ryan leaned closer, adjusting the controls. The image sharpened, revealing a series of odd markings on the ground near a cluster of boulders. At first glance, they looked random, like cracks in the soil. But as the camera zoomed in even further, the truth became clear. They're footprints, Maya whispered, her voice tinged with disbelief. Everyone froze. Footprints, human footprints. How is that possible? Alex asked, breaking the silence. We're the first humans here, right? Ryan frowned, his brow furrowing. According to mission records, yes. No one's ever been to this part of the galaxy before. Laura knelt down, studying the screen intently. The prints were unmistakable. Each one bore the shape of a human shoe, complete with treads and scuff marks. They weren't old either. The edges were crisp, suggesting they had been made recently. Whoever, or whatever, had left them couldn't have been far away. This doesn't make sense, Laura muttered, shaking her head. There's no way humans could have reached this planet without us knowing about it. Ryan crossed his arms, his expression grim. Maybe it's some kind of trick. Could the soil be forming patterns that look like footprints? It's possible, Laura admitted, though she didn't sound convinced. But I don't think so. These are too precise. Too deliberate. The group exchanged uneasy glances. None of them wanted to admit it, but the discovery filled them with both curiosity and dread. If humans really had been here before, who were they? And why had no one ever heard of them? We need to investigate, Laura said finally, standing up. Her tone left no room for argument. Whatever, or whoever, made these prints might still be nearby. We can't just ignore this. Ryan hesitated, clearly torn between caution and duty. After a moment, he sighed and nodded. Fine, but we stick together. No one goes off alone. With that, the team loaded up the rover and prepared to follow the trail of footprints. As they drove across the alien landscape, the glowing plants cast shifting shadows over their faces. Each bump and turn brought them closer to answers, but also deeper into the unknown. None of them could shake the feeling that they were being watched.